Good morning. Good morning. I am thrilled to be with you this morning because my favorite thing to talk about is the Labyrinth. And as a bonus, I'm a Unity person too. So I get to talk to my own tribe about the thing I love. When Karen asked me to speak to you today, she told me a little bit about you, and she said this congregation is full of experienced spiritual seekers, that you're all really working on your own spiritual growth. And so she asked me to address you not with just the basics, but as a fellow sojourner. And so I want to do that for you today. As Mercedes said in the introduction of me, that I walked my first labyrinth in the summer of 1996. I was with a group of lay ministers from Unity of Bellevue, and we were at Harmony Hill over on Hood Canal. And we came back and very quickly got busy and built the outdoor labyrinth in some clear property behind our church. And all of that unfolded in about 4 months. For me, then personally, the Labyrinth took on some great meaning for me, and so then I went on to become certified at Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, and then purchased my own canvas labyrinth a year later, and I've been doing small group workshops now for about 15 years. And then after I completed walking the Camino in Spain last year, and I did it, it took me 10 years to do it. It was a long walk. I went for a couple of weeks at a time as my vacation time allowed. But when I completed it, I had heard that the oldest known labyrinth on earth, the one that Jeff Sayward says is the oldest existing one, is carved in granite somewhere near an old monastery, somewhere in northwestern Spain. And with a little research, I sort of had a little Nancy Drew project, and I went and I found it. And it is carved in granite, so it survived. It's about 4,000 years old. So Labyrinth has always been a symbol of pilgrimage, a symbol for people who have been on a journey. And so I want to let you know that if you do want some basic background about the Labyrinth, I really encourage you to attend James Tierney's workshop after this service. James has been teaching about the Labyrinth for a long time. It's going to be a great, worthwhile expenditure of your time. He'll teach you a lot, and you will also then be able to walk the Labyrinth over in Denny Park as a community. And I want to give a shout out to Jackie. Jackie, one of the things I know, thank you for being the catalyst for that Labyrinth across the street. Here's the thing I know for sure, that when the universe wants a labyrinth to be placed somewhere, all the universe needs is a willing heart and someone who believes in the possibility, and things will unfold in an amazing way. And my friend Dan Niven is here. He's helped put in a lot of labyrinths around town. You know that to be true too. All it takes is someone with vision and passion. Now, Lauren Artress, she's the woman at Grace Cathedral who has really been one of the primary catalysts for the revival of using the Labyrinth. Back in the early 90s, when she had formed Veriditas, her organization, and was beginning to bring the Labyrinth out of obscurity into churches, she tells the story that she was having breakfast one morning in a hotel, and they brought her scrambled eggs, and she was putting pepper on her scrambled eggs. And from that, she got the vision that what she wanted was to pepper the planet with labyrinths. And 20 years later, her vision is coming true. There are labyrinths everywhere. And if you look to find them in churches, in parks, in hospitals, in private gardens, you won't be disappointed. They are everywhere. A couple of quick pieces of information. I want to make sure that we all understand the distinction between a labyrinth and a maze. A maze is a puzzle. A maze is a place where you can make a wrong turn, where you can get lost, where you can get stuck, where it's a do-over or a fatal error. Labyrinths are not like that. Labyrinths are what we call a unicursal path, meaning there's just simply one path, beginning at the beginning and going to the goal or the center, and then that same path back out. You can't fail. Labyrinths sort of serendipitously and spontaneously appeared all over the earth about 4,000 years ago. It's a mystery we haven't unraveled yet, but they appeared in Northern Europe, in Northern Africa, in our own Southwest with the Native American medicine wheel. There are also patterns, carved patterns that I've found in India. And then, of course, the circular path is a continual theme in the great religions all around the world. But the labyrinth appeared, we don't know exactly how, but we do know that it was about 4,000 years ago. Now, how did we get from that simple 7-circuit design to the elaborate chart pattern? What Jeff Sayward, the foremost historian on Labyrinth, says is that during the Dark Ages, when the Celtic scribes in Ireland were transcribing the scriptures, the Bible and other sacred writings, they would use the labyrinth design as they embellished the corners of the pages in the books they were transcribing. And as they began to understand the principles of geometry and order and proportion, that simple 7-circuit design elaborated into the full 11-circuit chart-style labyrinth that is so popular today. And then, during the flowering of the Middle Ages, as they were beginning to build those gorgeous cathedrals in Europe, and they began to have greater understanding of geometry and order and proportion, and they understand that the patterns of nature were based on order and proportion, people believed that if they built spaces that replicated the order and proportion of nature, then God would feel at home there and would dwell among us. So that soaring feeling that you get when you walk into those stunningly beautiful cathedrals is not an accident. They wanted a place where the Spirit of God could meet an open heart. And it was very simple then to decide to place labyrinths in the floors of those cathedrals, because they became then spaces where the human heart and the divine could meet. They were used as ritual space for initiations. They were used as ritual space to enact pilgrimage. They were used as quiet meditation. They fell out of use for a long time, and that's kind of a mystery as to why, but in the 21st century, we're awfully glad that they're back. I understand that your young people are having their moving up ceremony today. So downstairs, the young people are walking the labyrinth. And this is historically a very accurate use of the labyrinth. It symbolizes transformation and initiation. So as a young person enters the labyrinth, he leaves behind that which was familiar. It's a long and winding path to the center, and he must commit to the whole distance. And he must go all the way through all of the twists and turns. Patience and perseverance are essential, but here's the beautiful thing. Success is assured because the labyrinth does not mislead. It always carries you to the goal. Once the goal is reached, though, the journey's not finished, because then the young person must turn and take that profound shift that's happened inside of them and carry it back out into the world and become the newer person moving on to the next step in life. I want to tell you a little of my story. In the fall of 1996, it was actually November 11th, 1996, in fact, because it was the 20th anniversary of my mother's passing. My mother died when I was 19 and she was 42. She died of cancer at a very young age. And I had come to the nearly completed labyrinth at Bellevue to walk that day to honor her memory. And as I walked, I realized that I was carrying still a whole lot of anger and pain. And as I walked in her memory, I began to understand that I really did need to forgive her, that even though she left too soon, that she abandoned me too young, and I was angry and at a loss about that, that I was still held in grace and I could let her go and I could feel all right about that tragic thing that had happened 20 years before. And then as I walked further, I began to realize that, I'd spent half my life. I was nearly 40 at the time, but I had spent half my life without a mother. I had spent my young adulthood without the advice and the support and the consolation of that maternal presence. And as I walked, and I have to tell you, that was a difficult time. I made some raging mistakes at that age. And I had a little bit of bumpy road. But as I walked, I began to open my heart and realize still that I was held in grace and that my life was divinely guided and that I could forgive myself for the mistakes I made and that I could affirm that I had the emotional and the spiritual tools to then continue on with my path in life. A few years ago, I was at Chartres Cathedral, and I had begun just sort of casually to call Chartres the Mother Labyrinth. I was in the cathedral in the evening, and the evening light was illuminating the stained glass, and I was with a group of people, and there was a cellist playing, there were votive candles, and it was just this lovely, lovely time. And all of a sudden, the air began to shimmer, and everything sort of began to vibrate gently, and this warm feeling sort of came over me. And the very simple realization that in all of these years that I have been walking the labyrinth, I was most drawn to it because the labyrinth, being such a divine feminine symbol, had become mother to me. It became the place I always went to when I was confused, when I was upset, when I needed to strengthen my resolve for something, when I needed to think through a problem, when I needed to open my heart and see my life a little bit differently. And so the labyrinth was truly a gift for me that evening. When I first came to Unity back in 1990, one of the great truths that struck me, and one of the great truths that we hold in this church, is that the same Spirit that lived in Jesus Christ lives in each one of us. That is a profoundly empowering belief, and it's also a little bit scary because it's a big responsibility. If the same Spirit that lived in Jesus lives in me, then I better get my act together. If that same Spirit that lived in Jesus Christ lives in each one of us, then we know that accessing that core spirit is what animates and moves us on our own spiritual journey. And here's the great thing. The labyrinth is a powerful tool for accessing your core Christ nature and finding that quiet place where you can listen to that still small voice. The labyrinth provides a place to remind yourself of your true nature and of what truly matters. And it helps you access your inner wisdom and find a place of solace and of grace and of peace and of clarity. There's a few things that I've really come to understand about the labyrinth as I've done my work in these last several years. The biggest one is that the labyrinth presents you with a paradigm and an organizing principle. One of my favorite things about the labyrinth is that there's no dead ends and there are no mistakes. There is simply the continual unfolding of the path. It's all about surrender and flow. All you have to do is stay open and keep moving forward. And if there's nothing else you remember me saying today, stay open and keep moving forward. There's no right way to walk a labyrinth. There's no wrong way to do it. There's no right way to do it. You just do it. The still small voice takes its time to speak clearly, so you just have to stay with it until you hear. But you must trust this. God knows the design of your life, and your life is divinely guided. You are not a failure, and you are not flawed. You are on a journey, and you are on a student of the cosmos. You're in Earth school, and you don't have to get all the answers right the first time. The labyrinth is a place to see your history in a different context. Life is unpredictable, and things are not always as they seem. And most of us at some point have struggled with a problem and struggled mightily. We've ruminated about it in daylight and in dark. Perhaps we sought counseling. We were frustrated, perhaps a little depressed. Things just were difficult. And there was really no way to unravel that challenge. But unravel it did. And one day, if you look back, you will notice that whatever that challenge was that you were dealing with, one day it just began to resolve. And the stress around it began to dissolve, and things began to form in a new way. And you think of that in the paradigm of the labyrinth, of having just taken a few more turns, and the labyrinth has taken you in a new direction and taken you to the place where you need to be. The labyrinth always reminds you nothing is permanent and change always happens. One of my favorite quotes from Lenny Bruce is that pain plus time equals humor. So when you think about something in your life that happened in your past that was somewhere between inconvenient, irritating, to nearly tragic, but over time you've done your work, you've done your healing, and now you can tell that story with a sense of irony and perhaps a good laugh. The labyrinth is a terrific place to learn to laugh. Because all those missteps, all those mistakes, the little indiscretion that you hope nobody knows about, the fantastic failure, the degree you didn't finish, the race you didn't run, these are not failures. These are just experiences that are woven into the fabric of your life if you allow your mind to think of your life as a continual unfolding path. Those experiences will get woven into your story and who you are. All you have to do is stay open and keep moving forward. And it's really important just to make sure that you really let go of regrets. I will tell you that I think we all start aging when our regrets outnumber our dreams and our goals. Let those regrets just get woven into, that was an experience in my life and I'm moving forward. The next great thing I've learned about the labyrinth is no matter where you go, there you are. No matter where I go, there I am. And people show up in the labyrinth the way they show up in life. And so if you find yourself a little irritated with the slow person in front of you or the pushy person behind you or the children that are making far too much of a ruckus, think about that in the context of your life. If you find yourself analyzing the labyrinth and trying to figure it out, or trying to work real hard to have some sort of a spiritual holy moment, or you're just efforting a little bit too much, trying too hard, let go of that. But realize that the labyrinth is a gentle mirror, and that mirror is framed in grace and compassion. So don't be afraid to look at it and go, oh yeah, that's me. The labyrinth is a marvelous place to do your forgiveness work. If there's someone you need to forgive, take a moment and walk the labyrinth as them. It's a great place to experiment with that, to take a walk, to see the world from behind their eyes, and to find some mercy and some compassion for them. And then take that same walk yourself and find the mercy and compassion for yourself. Because you're just on a journey, remember, we don't have to get it right the first time. The fabric of community is woven in the labyrinth. It's marvelous to walk a labyrinth alone, but walking it with other people is an entirely different experience. When you walk with other people, you realize that they are fellow sojourners, they are fellow pilgrims on the same path. They're on the same path as you, they're just in a different place on it. So as we begin to see the people in our lives as people on the same journey that are just coming along and trying to, doing their best to express their Christ nature, doing their best to be awake, to be able to see the genius and the dignity in each human being as you walk. It's a powerful, powerful thing to do. And the great metaphor is when you're walking the labyrinth and you're on a portion of the path and someone else is walking in tandem with you on an adjacent path for a time. And then one of you takes a turn and you go another way. What a great metaphor for the precious times we have with people and how important it is to have ease in the letting go when it's time for them to go a different direction on their journey. The Labyrinth is a great place for a community to heal. We've had a rough time in Seattle in the last week and a half. Violence shakes us all to the core. And so in walking the Labyrinth, we learn how to be more open-hearted. We learn how to be optimistic for the future. We learn to say, this is a bad moment in our communities, in the life of our community, and we're going to move forward. We're going to heal from this. A really important thing to remember when you encounter a labyrinth is that you never step into the same river twice. Heraclitus said that. He was a Greek philosopher, and he said that about 500 years ago. And at about the same time, Buddha was exhorting his followers to always maintain a beginner's mind. So the great thing about labyrinths, and I know this from personal experience, there are no two labyrinths alike. Every one has a different gift to give you. And for these reasons. One, each labyrinth that you encounter, you're at a different space in your life. It's a different day for you and a different set of circumstances. Take your whole self in because you're taking a different person into the labyrinth than you took on the last time you walked one. The second most important thing is that the labyrinth that you've encountered was built with love and grace and generosity. The people who built it there had intentions, and their intentions remain evident in that space. So when you walk into a labyrinth, you walk into a space that someone else set there for you out of love and to honor your journey. The third thing is that the labyrinth, I believe, holds the energy of everyone who's walked it before you. The energy of a fresh, brand new labyrinth is different than walking the labyrinth at Chartres. But I will tell you that whether 2 people have walked it or 20 million, that labyrinth carries the morphic field of the people who've been there before you, and you leave yours with it too. So there again, even though the people aren't there with you presently, I believe that their spirit and their soul is there with you, and you add to it and you gain from it. So I believe the labyrinth has come back into our culture at this time, I think because we need it so desperately. These are chaotic times, and people have real challenges. And I think the labyrinth then becomes a safe place and a safe container and a sanctuary of grace and peace to do our work. We need to heal, we need to listen, we need to learn and to grow. We need to shift our perceptions, and we need a place to fortify us in our resolve to keep our hearts open. So my challenge for you. All of us who are striving to express this Christ nature, we truly are on the hero's journey. The labyrinth is about the hero's journey. And the purpose of the journey, our highest goal, is to see just how much our Christ nature can shine through. How brightly and consistently can we shine our light? Just how brightly can we express creativity and joy and love and generosity and radiant enthusiasm out into the world? The challenge is to live skillfully, both in the spiritual realm and in the temporal realm. So I challenge you, let's all keep walking. Let's all keep walking a deeper walk and walk to a brighter future.